Welcome, I'm Pastor Mark Biltz with Shaddai Ministries, and I'm so excited about being able to bring you this message. We're going to be talking today about signs in the heavens. Let me ask you something. Do you believe the King is coming? Well, I believe he's coming very soon. The bigger question is this: are you ready? Are you ready for the King to come? Well, one of the things that I want to talk about is the Lord said he declared the end from the beginning. And so the very opening words of the Bible, where it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, that kind of strips away any illusion that all of this happened by chance or was random. We know there was a creator. As a matter of fact, do you realize almost all scientific discoveries that have happened over the last several hundred years, even 400 or 500 years, have been discovered by people who are Bible believers, be they Jews or Christians? It's because we realize that there are patterns in the universe, and we know there's a God who created everything. So what we are like, we're like investigators, and we want to go and investigate the Bible itself. And so we want to take a look and see what we can find, because God has hidden himself in nature to some extent and in the scriptures, and we want to, like good investigators, see what we can find. And so with that said, one of the things that I want to talk about is how God has a day timer. Okay, the first thing I want us to realize as we look at these signs in the heavens is the fact that the spring feasts were all fulfilled to some degree with Messiah's first coming. Now, I think all of us believe that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So with that being said, I want you to realize that as you look at this picture, the spring feasts of Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits were all fulfilled at Messiah's first coming. And then there's this bridge that takes us to the Feast of Shavuot, or the Feast of Pentecost, with the giving of the Torah, where the law was written upon our hearts. Now, the Messiah fulfilled Passover on Passover. He died on Passover. He was buried on unleavened bread. He rose on first fruits. The Spirit was poured out on Shavuot. Then there's this long dry period, and I have this bridge going over to the fall feasts. Well, the fall feasts all speak of his second coming. We have the Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Yom Kippur, and the Feast of Tabernacles. So the Lord is going to fulfill all the fall feasts to the day, just like he fulfilled the spring feast to the day. And so I want you to realize God has a day timer. You're going to see here in this picture, I got a picture of a day timer, and I want you to realize that just like if your boss wanted to meet with you on a certain day or at a certain time, you need to be there. Well, God has a day timer. These are his divine appointments. In your Bibles, in English, it says feasts, but the Hebrew word is moed, and it means a divine appointment. And that's what God has with you. And it's so important that we be on God's calendar. I have this timepiece here of a watch, and I want you to realize as we look at this, most people, once they get this, it revolutionizes their life. Do you realize that the Muslims, they have a calendar, okay, but it is based totally upon the moon. And then all of the rest of us, the non-Muslims, just the regular Gentiles in the world today, we have a calendar, but it's based totally on the pagan calendar based upon the sun. But we need to understand that the Torah has God's biblical calendar, and he wants to relate to us on his time. That's why in Genesis it says the sun and the moon, it says let them be for your calendar. And so we need to realize we need to use both the sun and the moon. And when we realize God's calendar, we begin to understand his day timer, and we begin to realize that all of the festivals really are his time clock. And just as time goes around 24 hours a day, and then they repeat themselves, we're going to find the feasts also go round and round. And if we want to understand what God's doing, we have to understand the feast days. And so I have here a picture of a biblical calendar, and you need to get one. They are available a lot of different places. You can get one at LShaddaiMinistries.us, as a matter of fact. But let me ask you something. Why did God create the sun and the moon? Most people think it's for light or for heat, but we need to realize in Genesis 1:14 is where God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. And he says, let them be for signs, for seasons, for days, and for years. So right here we see that God created the sun and the moon to send signals. The number one reason he says is for signs. Now, if you look at this picture here, you're going to see a total lunar eclipse, a partial lunar eclipse. We have a total solar eclipse, what is called an annular eclipse, where the moon doesn't totally block out the sun, and then also a partial solar eclipse. Now, should we be surprised then in Luke 21:25 when it says there will be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars? We should not, because if in Genesis God said he created the sun and the moon to send signs, we should be surprised that Yeshua, Jesus, says in the end times there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. Now in Romans 10, chapter 10, verse 17 and 18, it says, faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. But I say, have they not heard? Yea, verily, their sound went into all the earth, and their words unto the end of the world. So here we see the heavens are declaring the glory of God, and we're seeing that they have a sound that they make. As a matter of fact, in Psalms 19, 1 through 7, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. Do you know in Hebrew that word for declare is the same root word that is used for a scribe that will write out a Torah scroll? In other words, the heavens are God's glory written out. And it also says in Psalms 19, it goes on to say the firmament shows his handiwork. But one of the amazing things about that, we see here the Strong's number for that is 5046, and where it says the firmament shows his handiwork, the Hebrew word is nagad, and it means to stand boldly out, to announce, always by word of mouth to one present. Okay, so here we see that the firmament of the heavens is declaring to us the glory of God and what his plan is. And what's amazing about Psalms 19, it goes on to say, day unto day utter speech, and night unto night shows knowledge. Now, even though this is the same English word to show, it's a different Hebrew word here. And here, the Hebrew word implies to live out, to declare, or to show. So the heavens are like the written word of God, and they're standing boldly out, proclaiming the word of God. And here we see that night unto night, what are they doing? The heavens are declaring the gospel, believe it or not. Now, what's interesting is we were just got done reading Romans 10 where Paul was writing, and he's quoting Psalms 19. You see that in this next part of this verse. It says, there is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Well, what I think is interesting about this is where it says their line is gone out throughout all the earth. In Hebrew, this implies a chorus line, like it's a piece of music. The heavens are singing out the glory of God. Now, let's go back again and look at Psalms 19. What it says here is this. It says, in them has he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is his bridegroom coming out of his chamber. Well, the Hebrew word for chamber there is chuppah. So if you see, you can see the universe here, or solar system at least, with the sun in the center. And I'm putting a chuppah over the sun because that word for chamber there, a better translation is chuppah, which is a wedding canopy. Okay? And then it says that he rejoices as a strong man to run a race. Well, who was that strong man? None other than Yeshua. It says his going forth is from one end of the heaven, his circuit to the ends of it, and there's nothing hid from the heat. Now in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 26, God says, I'm going to call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. And when you think about being a witness has to testify about what's going on. Well, right here, God is calling heaven and earth to witness against them. So we see heaven and earth both can declare things. And so let's look at Psalms 89. This is verse 35 and 37. Let's look about how the sun and the moon are to be a witness. God says, once have I sworn by my holiness that I will not lie to David. His seed will endure forever. His throne will be as the sun before me. And then it says it'll be established forever as the moon and as a faithful witness in heaven. So here we see the sun and the moon, and the moon in particular here is a faithful witness declaring what God wants us to hear. Now the Hebrew word for witness here is the two letters of the ayin dalet, which is ed. And if you'll notice here on this picture, I have a Torah scroll with the Shema. And the first large letter is the letter ayin, and the last large letter is the letter dalet, which makes up the Hebrew phrase, to hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Well, what's fascinating is if you take those two letters, it forms that Hebrew word for witness. Okay, and so also those same two letters, the ayin dalet, also stands for forever, forever and ever. So in Deuteronomy 6:4, where we say, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, we're to see that, we're to hear and to understand that that's the witness forever for the Lord. Now, in Genesis 21:30, I want to take this root word ed, and I'm going to add a Hebrew letter to it on either side of it, one at a time, so you can get a better idea of what it really means to be a witness. In Genesis 21:30, Abraham is upset about this well. And it says that, he says, for these 7 ewe lambs shall you take of my hand, that they may be a witness to me that I'm the one that dug this well. And here is that letter, but watch this. It has the letter hey added to the ayin dalet. It's let it be a witness. It's edah. Now in Numbers 17:7, in English, you're going to see that I have 3 different translations here. They all say in Hebrew the same word, ed. But I want you to notice this. One of them it says the tabernacle of witness. One of them refers to the tabernacle of testimony. And one of them refers to the tabernacle of meeting. So we see this 2-letter word, ed, can refer not only to a witness, but it can refer to a testimony, as someone would say, or even a very meeting place. But look at Numbers 1 and 2. Here it talks about how the Lord said unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tabernacle of the congregation. Well, here the very word for congregation is moed. And so you has that same word for witness, the ayin dalet, with the mem and the vav attached to it. Well, what's fascinating is this very word moed here is the same word translated as season in Genesis, and it's the same word that's translated as the feast or the festivals in Leviticus 23. Now, this was the English word congregation that was translated as moed. The amazing thing is in this verse, it talks about taking the sum of the congregation, but this time congregation is not moed. It is a dot with the letter tav on the end. And so again, I want you to notice these letters, ayin dalet, being a witness, can refer to a congregation as a witness, as a testimony, as the meeting place. Now, the very word moed refers to a fixed time or appointment. Like I was saying earlier, God has a day timer. He has a fixed time that he wants to meet with us. Well, you can take the letter yud and put it in front of that word, the ayin dalet, which is ed, and you get ya'ad. And that means to engage for marriage. So we need to understand, how many of you want to be at the wedding of the Messiah? Well, if you want to be at the wedding of the Messiah, you better be at the dress rehearsal and realize that these feasts are signs of what's to come. As a matter of fact, in Genesis 17:10-11, when God was talking to Abraham about the covenant of circumcision, he said that is to be a sign. Well, here this word sign, I want you to realize, is ot in Hebrew. It's made up of 3 letters, the aleph, vav, tav. And the reason I bring that up is because in Genesis 34:15, that same word for sign is also used to mean the word consent. We need to consent that this sign is going to be the signal. Because if God, if he loves you and he wants to meet with you and he says, I'm going to send you a sign to meet with you, but if we disagree, if we don't consent to that sign, we're going to miss the meeting. So we need to understand that these signs from God, we need to agree. This is going to be hard to believe, but look at Luke 14:16-18. Here it talks about a certain man who had made a great supper, and he bid many people. And his servants, he sent his servants at supper time to tell them that were bidden to come, for everything's ready. And then it says they all with one consent began to make excuse. They said, oh, I got to go here, I got to go there. So here they with one consent did not want to have anything to do with the wedding. Now, here's something that I want to point out. I have a picture here of a sign that says the bridge is out, 8 miles ahead. Well, if you were speeding down a highway and you saw this sign that says bridge out 8 miles ahead, you're going to start slowing down. This is a pretty important sign. So I want us to realize how important signs can be. Well, I tell you what if you're going 50 miles down the highway and you saw this sign that says bridge out 8 feet ahead? You're really going to be slamming on your brakes. Well, you know, the nice thing to me is that God gives us signs that are years ahead. God hates to bring judgment. He always wants to bring warning before judgment. And so God has sent a lot of warning signs in the heavens. And people need to take heed. And we need to realize when we see these signs in the heavens, it doesn't mean that event's going to happen at that same moment or that very day or that very week. It's just that God is trying to signal us bridges out several years ahead. And as we get closer, these signs, if we're looking and paying attention to them, we're going to see how much closer we are. Now let me ask you something. If you saw this sign that says danger bull, you're going to pay attention, right? Well, here's someone who didn't pay attention, and he is on the run. Well, I tell you what, I want you to take a look at this picture here. This is a picture of Jupiter getting slammed by 21 fragments of some meteorites. Now this happened in 1994 on July 22nd. Well, actually it started July 16th. It went through July 22nd. But what's so amazing about this sign is that this happened first off on a Sabbath, but even more than that, it happened on the 9th of Av on the Hebrew calendar. This is absolutely incredible because the 9th of Av is a day of judgment. And here we see a sign of judgment with these 21 meteorites slamming into the planet Jupiter. If any one of those would have hit Earth, we'd have been in big trouble. But the other amazing thing is that the Torah portion for that weekend was Devarim, which is also known as Deuteronomy. But the Hebrew translation means these are the words. So it's like here we see on the day of judgment, the 9th of Av, God is saying, look, these are my words. I am the one who is speaking to you while these meteorites are slamming into Jupiter. And what's very significant is that there were 21 fragments, which is 7 times 3. Now we're going to see the significance of that as we end. But I just wanted to point that out, that we all know both 7 and 3 are very significant. Now let me ask you something. There's a lot of people on this planet, around 6.5, 7 billion, something like that. But you know what's amazing? You know how many stars there are? There's like a 2 followed by 20 zeros. I mean, there's like, 100 times more stars as there are people, or even more. But look at Psalms 147:4. God says he tells the number of the stars, so he knows exactly how many stars there are. But more than that, look what it says. He calls them all by their names. God knows every star's name. And if there's that many stars and he knows them all by name, be assured he knows you by your name. And here's what's amazing. Clear back in Job, who lived over 4,000 years ago, he lived around the time of Abraham, and he is quoting the names of the stars. It's like God had told Job the name of these stars that he calls by name. And in Job 9:9, it mentions the star Arcturus, and it mentions the constellation Orion, and it mentions the Pleiades, the 7 stars. Now, if you look at this picture, I show how big that star Arcturus is compared to our sun. Our sun is that little tiny dot to the bottom left, and here Arcturus is this great big star to the right. Well, as a matter of fact, take a look at this constellation. This constellation is where you find the star Arcturus. It's called Boötes, and you're going to see here by this little yellow circle around this sickle he has in his hand. That sickle you're going to find is very significant. Now, in his knee is where Arcturus is located. Now, as a matter of fact, you'll see these 2 dogs to the right. That's Canis Venatici, and that's where the Whirlpool Galaxy is. That stands up on end. And you may notice that that is where NASA sent back this picture of what looks like a cross right in the middle of the Whirlpool Galaxy. But what I want to talk about for a minute is this star Arcturus. Arcturus's name in Hebrew means to assemble. It means to come. Well, guess what? The constellation that it's in is Boötes, and in Hebrew, the very word bo means to come. So here we have a picture of a man walking rapidly with the sickle in his hand. I can't help but think of a harvest that he's about to reap. He's got a spear in his other hand. He's ready to judge the heavens and the earth. And so let's take a look at Joel. This is probably one of the most significant verses we're going to look at today. This is Joel chapter 3, verse 11 through 16. It says, assemble yourselves and come. Do you realize the very word for assemble here in Hebrew is the same word for the star Arcturus in Job? It's the same word. And then it says, assemble yourselves and come. And the Hebrew word for come is bow. So as we're reading Joel 3, 11 through 16, I want you to think of this constellation of Boötes with Arcturus in it. That's what it's referring to. As a matter of fact, watch how it unfolds. It says, come all you heathen and gather yourselves together round about. Cause your mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen wake up and come to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I will sit to judge all the heathen round about. Now look what it says. Put in the sickle, the harvest is right. Come and get you down. Well, this is specifically referring to this constellation Boötes. It mentions the sickle in his hand. It mentions the word bow. We see there to assemble themselves, which is the star Arcturus. And look how this is all tied to the day of the Lord. It goes on to say that there are multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. And now look at this, the sun and the moon will be darkened. Here it's talking about eclipses that will be happening as signs in the heaven at the same time. As a matter of fact, E.W. Bullinger has a book called Witness of the Stars. He lived in the late 1800s, an incredible writer, and he talks all about how the gospel is literally written in the stars. So I want you to know that this is really referred to in Psalms 96 and verse 13. Look at this. It says, for he comes to judge the earth. He'll judge the world in righteousness and the people with his truth. So this is almost like the constellation Boötes, which means to come. And it says he's coming to judge the earth. One of the other interesting things is I want you to take a look at this. This is from NASA's website. And it talks about gamma ray bursts, which are like supernovas where stars just explode. Now here's a picture of a exploding star that came back from NASA that happened back in 2008. As a matter of fact, if you look at this picture, you're going to see a little yellow ring around the exploding star. This exploding star was so big it was able to be seen by the naked eye, and here it was photographed from Earth exploding. Well, you know what's amazing about this? If you go to NASA's website, you'll see here, dated March 21st of 2008, it talks about this gamma ray burst that was so big that it could be seen by the naked eye. Well, you know what's incredible about that? If you look at the biblical calendar here, you'll see March 21st was Purim, tied right to the biblical calendar. And not only that, guess where this gamma ray burst took place? It took place in the constellation Boötes, which means I'm coming. So here, right in the constellation Boötes, we have this big gamma ray burst announcing to the world that Yeshua is coming, and he's coming very soon. Now, I also want to go to Job chapter 28, verse 31 and 32. It says, can you bind the sweet influences of Pleiades? Well, let me show you something here. In this picture, you're going to see some other stars. You're going to see Betelgeuse, this great big star. You're going to see Aldebaran and Regal, and you can see how small Arcturus is next to it. Well, I just got done reading in Job 38, 31, and 32 about binding the sweet influences of Pleiades. That's the 7 stars. And I want you to show you in this next picture how all of these are tied together, because we had read earlier, and you can even see in this verse where it talks about, can you loose the bands of Orion? Well, do you know Orion and the Pleiades are right next door to each other? If you look at this picture, you're going to see the constellation Orion. Most people know him by his belt, those 3 stars at his waist. But I want you to notice Betelgeuse is that great big star up in his right arm. Regal is the bright white star down there by his foot. And then you have, as a matter of fact, the Horsehead Nebula is also located at Orion. Many of you might be familiar with that. It's a famous nebula. But I want you to notice in Taurus the bull, in his eye is the star Aldebaran. And then you'll notice at the heart of the bull is Pleiades. And so I have a picture here of Pleiades as it gets a little bit bigger, and I'll even make it bigger so you can see that they are located right in the heart of Orion. Now, the Hebrew word for Pleiades is Chema, and it refers to the 7 stars, okay? But it also implies to store away, like someone is storing away a jewel. We see that in Malachi chapter 3, verse 16 through 18, where the Lord talks about how those who think upon his name, he says, they're going to be mine, and the day that I make up my jewels, I will spare them. Now in Amos 5:8, it says, seek him that makes the 7 stars in Orion. So I want you to know, and I just want to make this plain here right now, we're not into astrology at all. We're into biblical astronomy. We firmly believe that we're not seeking the 7 stars or Orion, but we're seeking him that makes the 7 stars in Orion. And as long as we realize that these things are not about us, they're all about God, we're going to be in safe territory. But so here at Amos 5:8, it mentions those 7 stars, the Pleiades, and it mentions Orion. Well, you know what's amazing to me? I don't know if you ever thought about this before, but in the book of Revelation, this is chapter 1 and verse 16, John has a vision, and what does he see? He sees Yeshua, and in his right hand are 7 stars. Well, I believe those 7 stars, there's multiple meanings to these things. It's not like there's just one fixed meaning. But I believe that here we have this bull, and right in the heart of the bull are these 7 stars. And then we read Revelation 1:16, he has in his right hand 7 stars. I want you to think of this as another level of interpretation. Yes, it's the 7 churches, or the 7 congregations would be a better translation. But it's also, I believe, refers to the 7 stars of the Pleiades in the constellation Taurus. Now I'm going to tell you why. First off, do you know the Syriac name for Pleiades is Sukkot or booths? How significant. Sukkot is 7 days long, all right? And here we have these 7 stars, and Pleiades means the congregation of the judge or the ruler. So just like the 7 churches are the congregation of the Lord, Pleiades, it literally means the congregation of the judge or of the ruler. Okay, well, what do we find here? I want you to take a look at this picture again. Here we have Taurus the bull, and I want you to see this picture I have of a white bull over his head. Do you realize this was the ancient letter Aleph? The very word aluf in Hebrew means oxen. We see that in Psalms 144:14, that our oxen may be strong to labor. So this very ox, I want you to realize, or this bull, is the very word Aleph, which is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is represented by an ox. It also can mean a family. And so here we have this picture of a bull rushing forward with mighty energy and fierce wrath, with his horns ready to push down the enemies and pierce them through and destroy them. Well, one of the amazing things to me is the stars that are in this constellation. You know, there's at least 141 stars just in this one constellation. But the brightest star is in the bull's eye, and it is called, like I said, Aldebaran. Well, what's amazing, this star means the governor. So here, the bull's eye, so to speak, the star Aldebaran means the governor, and we just read how Pleiades is the congregation of the governor or of the ruler. Well, there's a star up at the tip of his left horn, and it's called Al-Nath. Well, guess what? That name means the wounded one or the slain one. So this is another prophetic intimation that this coming Lord will first have been slain as a sacrifice. But this time what's happening? Now he's coming in power to judge the earth in righteousness, and he's going to subdue all enemies underneath his feet. Now, I want to show you something here. There's a Hebrew word, sar, and it's the Sheen Resh, as you see, and I have a crown on this Torah scroll. Well, this word sar means to come or to rule. And we see that in Joshua 5:15, where it says, the captain of the Lord's host said unto Joshua, take off your shoes from off your feet, you're standing on holy ground. Well, that is this word, sar. Well, what's amazing about that is you add the letter Vav to that word, and guess what? You get the word for bull, which is the constellation Taurus, shore. And so we see that in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 3, where it talks about how the ox knows his owner. But then he goes on to say, but Israel doesn't even know me. And so here we see not only is God compared to an ox as being first, letter Aleph, we also see Israel is compared to an ox or a bull. But we shouldn't be surprised about that when Israel is called God's son. Now, one other thing I just want to bring in here, if you add the letter Pei to this word for ox, you get shofar. And that shofar is basically the prince's mouth. And so I think this is incredible as you see this together. But let's take a look at this constellation Taurus one more time. Taurus, the bull, was assigned to Joseph, or rather to the two tribes of his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Now I have in this picture his horns. The two horns say Ephraim and Manasseh. And I want to show you why. Because if you go to Deuteronomy 33:17, it talks about his glory is like a firstborn bull. Well, this is referring to the constellation Taurus, which is a bull. Now look at this. It says, his horns like the horns of the wild ox, together with him, he shall gore the people to the end of the earth. They're the 10,000s of Ephraim, they're the thousands of Manasseh. So right here we see these horns are likened to the two tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. Now take a look at this. This verse is Isaiah 34, 1 through 8, talking about the very last days that we're in, and you're going to see how this is tied to the constellation Taurus. We see where it says, come near, you nations, and hear. Heed, you people. Let the earth hear and all that's in it. He goes on to say it's that the indignation of the Lord is against all the nations. His fury is against all their armies. He's utterly destroyed them. He's given them over to the slaughter. It talks about how the mountains will be melted with blood, how all the host of heaven will be dissolved, the heavens will be rolled up like a scroll. And it goes on to say that God says, my sword will be bathed in heaven, and it'll come down from Eden and on the people of my curse for judgment. Wow, it says the sword of the Lord will be filled with blood. This is absolutely incredible. But then it goes on to say this, the wild oxen will come down with them, and the young bulls with the mighty bulls, and the land will be soaked with blood, their dust saturated with fatness, for it's the day of the Lord's vengeance, the year of recompense for the cause of Zion. So here we see it's the day of the Lord's vengeance. He's coming down to destroy those nations who have come against Jerusalem, but he's likened unto this wild ox, or this bull, which is Taurus. So as we see events unfold in Taurus, this is telling us how soon we are to the coming of this very verse. It's pictured in the heavens. It's written in the book. It's a prophecy of a coming judge and of coming judgment. So let's take a look now at Psalms 44. This is verse 4 and 5. It says, you are my king, O God. Command deliverances for Jacob. Through you will we push down our enemies. Do you know the Hebrew word for push down here means to war or to butt with the horns, like with a wild bull. So what I want to do now is take a moment and talk to you now that I've laid the foundation about some signs that have come in the heavens. So let's start with this picture. This is from NASA's website. It lists the solar eclipses from 2001 through 2010. And in particular, what I've narrowed it down was to 2008 through 2010. And I want you to see that there was only one total solar eclipse in 2008. There was only one in 2009. There was only one total solar eclipse in 2010. Now, if you look at the screen, you're going to see they're all on different dates on our calendar. But guess what? They were all the same day on the biblical calendar, the first day of the month of Av. Now, this is incredible that they're all happening on the same day of the biblical calendar these 3 years. Now, guess where these eclipses took place? They all took place at the same place on the head of the crab. Now, here's the picture of the one from August 1st, 2008. Now, the crab, I believe, speaks of the nations. It's unclean, who are coming to attack Israel, represented by Virgo. And here we have the line of the tribe of Judah in between, trying to protect Israel from the nations of the world who want to attack it. Well, according to the sages, whenever there's a total solar eclipse, that means judgment is coming on the nations. Whenever there's a total lunar eclipse, that means judgment is coming upon the nation of Israel. Okay? And we all know what happened in the fall of 2008 when our economy crashed. Well, let's take a look at this picture here. Here's a picture from off the internet I got back in 2008. whether I saw a total lunar eclipse. This was back in March. And I began to look at that and think, wow, I know the Bible talked about the sun turning to sackcloth and the moon to blood at the coming of the Lord. And it mentions this, as you know, in Joel. It mentions it in the Gospels. It mentions it in the book of Revelation. So I thought it'd be interesting to go to NASA's website and see if there was any interesting eclipses happening over the next few years. Well, lo and behold, what did I find? Well, when I went there, I found that there were 2 lunar eclipses, one in April of 2014, one in October of 2014, and guess what? They landed on the first day of Passover and the first day of Sukkot, or Tabernacles. And I thought this is absolutely incredible because God had said he would send signs on the feast days. Well, then I went to 2015, and you're not going to believe what happened. Here's a picture. Nisan 1, which is when Moses set up the tabernacle, when the glory fell, God had told Moses that Nisan 1 is to be the beginning of the religious calendar. And what do we find? A total solar eclipse on the first day of Nisan in 2015, followed by another total lunar eclipse on Passover in 2015, followed by another solar eclipse on the Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, followed by another total lunar eclipse on the Feast of Sukkot, all in 2015. So here you have these 4 blood moons 2 years in a row, followed and accompanied by these solar eclipses, all on biblical holidays. I think God is trying to send us a message, and we need to pay attention. Well, guess what happened? If you remember, here's a news clip of what happened in 2008. Right after I had seen this discovery, I said, hey, judgment is going to be coming upon the nations in 2008. And look what happens here. The Dow falls 777 points. It was a 7% drop. It was a $700 billion loss. And it was on a $700 billion failed rescue plan. Well, guess when this happened? On the first day of the 7th month, which is Rosh Hashanah. So hello, we need to pay attention. Here God sends these signs in the heavens, and then look at the significance of the number 7. We see all of this happening on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the natural calendar year. And so we need to be paying attention to these signs that are in the heavens. As a matter of fact, I want you to show you this one picture. This is a picture of an annular solar eclipse that just happened recently this last May. Well, guess what? This is called an annular eclipse because it didn't totally block out the sun. Well, guess where this took place? In Taurus, right in the heart of Taurus. And so, do you realize when this occurred? It was May 20th in 2012. But I'm going to show you another reason why this needs to be on, we need to look at this on the biblical calendar. Guess when that was? Jerusalem Day. On the biblical calendar was ER 28, the very same day that Israel captured Jerusalem in 1967. Now it was June 6th on our calendar, but it was ER 28 on the biblical calendar. Well, because the biblical calendar is different than ours, this year ER 28 fell on May 20th. But this is so significant that this eclipse took place on Jerusalem Day in the heart of Taurus. And guess what? It was exactly 7 days before the feast of Shavuot, or Pentecost. Now, let's take a look here at Venus. I want to transition here for just a moment and talk about the planet Venus. Here you can see in Hebrew, its name is Nogah. That's for the planet Venus. Well, Nogah in Hebrew means to be bright, to be brilliant. Okay? Well, it also refers to dawn or morning time. Well, we know Venus, that's why it's called the morning star. Most of its light comes right before the break of day. As a matter of fact, after the moon, Venus is the brightest natural object in the sky. I have a picture here of Venus right above the head of Taurus. You can see how bright it is, and you can see Jupiter down below. But as we know, Venus reaches its maximum brightness shortly before sunrise or shortly after sunset. So I have a picture here of the West Coast. This was back on July 9th. It's about 4 in the morning. You can see the dark horizon there barely, and how bright Venus is right there. So it's known as not only the morning star, but also the evening star. Now what I want you to catch here is this. In Isaiah 62:1, it says, "For Zion's sake I will not hold my peace. For Jerusalem's sake I will not rest until righteousness goes forth as Nogah," or brightness. We could also be saying as Venus. And then it says, "and salvation as a lamp that burns." Well, we know the Hebrew word for salvation is Yeshua. So here right now is talking about Zion's sake, not holding your peace, and for Jerusalem's sake, not resting. We could be reading this as until the righteousness goes forth as bright as Venus, and as Yeshua as a lamp that burns. So here we can see from the text, we can liken Yeshua to the planet Venus. Now this is important to realize, and I'm going to make this connection even stronger here. This is from Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1 through 3. It says, "Arise and shine, for your light is come. The glory of the Lord is risen upon you. The Gentiles come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising." Well, we know this is referring to Yeshua. As a matter of fact, in 2 Peter 1:19, it talks about a more sure word of prophecy. And he says, "You'll do well that you take heed as unto a light that shines in a dark place until the day dawn and the day star arise in your heart." Well, here this is definitely referring to Venus. It's talking about the dawning of the day star. We also know it's referring to Yeshua. So I want you to see here, in a plain sense, the day dawn and the day star is the planet Venus, but also we know very well that this is referring to Yeshua. Now let's take a look at Venus one more time here. You're going to see I have the word Nogah above, and look at the size of Venus compared to Earth. Venus is one of the 4 solar terrestrial planets, meaning that like Earth, it has a rocky body in size and mass. It's not a gaseous planet, it's a solid planet. And so it's called in the scientific community as Earth's sister planet. Well, the reason why I bring that up is because I'm likening Venus to Yeshua again. Venus and Earth are considered sisters, and Yeshua has a lot of different relationships to us. He can be our brother, but he's also our Lord and our King. But when it comes to the bride, listen to Song of Solomon 4:9. He says to the bride, "You've ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse." As a matter of fact, 7 times the bride is referred to as his sister. Well, guess what? The constellation Pleiades is also known as the 7 sisters. Now, I want you to take a look at this. This is from back on March 31st, 2012. I have the constellation Taurus here with Pleiades. And remember, Pleiades is known as the 7 sisters. And I want you to notice here, the planet Venus is going to visit the 7 sisters. You see on this clip, it's March 31st. Now watch just a couple of days later, it's April 3rd. The planet Venus is right on top of Pleiades. And then we go to April 6th, and it has now passed the constellation or the 7 sisters, Pleiades. Well, you know what's incredible is, you know the timing of this? This is at Passover of 2012. So here, when you think of the 7 stars, the Pleiades as the 7 churches, the 7 stars in Revelation, here in Venus is as Yeshua. What is he doing? He's inspecting the bride at Passover. Remember, we have to get all the unleavened bread out of the house. And so here in the constellation Taurus, we have Venus likened to Yeshua, who's inspecting the bride. Well, guess what? It just so happens a couple months later, on June 6th in 2012, there was another eclipse of the sun, but this time it was with the planet Venus. And guess where it occurred? In Taurus. And guess what? It happened on June 6th, which is Jerusalem Day on the normal calendar. So think about this. Here we have a solar eclipse exactly 7 days before the Feast of Pentecost. And then 9 days later, like bookends, we have another eclipse of the sun, this time with the planet Venus. Both times they happen in the constellation Taurus. But this time, the eclipse happens right between the horns of the bull. And so it's like Yeshua is going to be coming to make war with the nations for what they're trying to do to Israel. Now, one of the things I want to bring out about this eclipse of the Venus and the sun is the rarity of it. Now, the amazing thing is this is all math. This is all math. If you look at this chart here, you'll see it happened in the year 1631 and then 1639. And then 1761 and 1769, 1874, 1882. Then it happened in 2004 and then now 2012. But look at this, it won't happen again until 2117 and 2125. So let's look at the mathematical pattern. We see there's 8 years, and then in between it's either 122 years or 105 years, 122 years or 105 years. And so we see this mathematical pattern. So they can go back thousands of years, they can go forward thousands of years, and they can pretty much almost with mathematical precision tell you exactly when Venus is going to eclipse the sun. Now, the reason why this happens, and that why one follows 8 years later and then doesn't happen again for a while, is because the orbital period of Venus going around the sun and Earth going around the sun are in an 8-year resonance one with the other. In other words, in the time it takes for the Earth to orbit the sun 8 times, Venus completes almost exactly 13 revolutions about the sun. So as a result, Venus and Earth line up in the same positions with respect to the sun. But I want you to notice this. In 1761, it was also Shavuot weekend. In 1882, it happened during Hanukkah. And then this year, of course, it happens right at Jerusalem Day, which is absolutely incredible. The other things I want you to see is they always happen in early December and in early June. That's just the math. Now take a look at these pictures. Here's where at the bottom is where Venus eclipsed the sun in 2004. At the top is where Venus eclipsed the sun in 2012. Now here's a picture of who was able to see it and who couldn't see it in 2004. And then here's a picture of who could see it and who couldn't see it in 2012, just recently. Well, both times it was able to be seen from the Middle East. Now here's some incredible pictures from NASA's website of the sun with Venus passing by. And I think this is just absolutely incredible. But the thing that's the most incredible to me is that these all happened, as you can see in this picture, in the constellation Taurus on Jerusalem Day. So as the sun, because it represents the nations, here God is declaring, I'm about to go to war against the nations. What do we find in Zechariah chapter 12, verse 6 through 9? Here God says, in that day, I'm going to make the governors of Judah like a hearth of fire among the wood, like a torch of fire in a sheaf, and they're going to devour all the people round about, on the right and on the left. It says Jerusalem will be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. Now, it goes on to say that it'll come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all nations that are coming against Jerusalem. This is serious. And so here when we see these eclipses happening between the horns of the bull, we can see that this is a sign that God is about to come and destroy all those nations that are coming against Jerusalem. Well, guess what? This calendar year on the biblical calendar is so extremely unique. It's almost like a chiropractor doing an alignment. God was doing an alignment. Because one of the reasons, if you remember, or if you're aware of this, a lot of people keep Pentecost on different days. Some keep it always on Sivan 6. Another people always keep it on a Sunday. Well, guess what? This year they both synced. Everyone kept Shavuot on the same day because it just so happened Sivan 6 fell on a Sunday. Well, guess what? The Nisan 1, the beginning of the religious calendar year this year, was highly significant. And if you don't understand the biblical calendar, you're not going to see how significant this is. So let me show you why it was so unique. I have this picture. This is of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which means the new moon of the first day of the biblical year. And I want you to notice something here on this calendar that you see here. This happened on March 24th of 2012. But guess what? Why is this so significant? The reason why is, first off, it fell on a Shabbat. Nisan 1 does not always have to fall on a Shabbat. It can fall on any day of the week. So the fact that it fell on a Shabbat was very significant. But guess what? The Torah portion was Vayikra, which is Leviticus 1. Well, guess what Leviticus 1 is all about? It's all about Moses building the tabernacle on Nisan 1. So what do we find? Here on the Sabbath, the Torah portion was Moses assembling the tabernacle, and it was the very day Moses was actually assembling the tabernacle. So here we are reading the exact instructions given to Moses by God on the very day from the very Torah portion that the event actually happened. This is absolutely incredible. In Exodus 12, 1 through 3, we see this is where God told Moses that this is to be the first month for you. Okay? So this is when the glory fell. So this is very significant. All right, well, when does this happen again? Well, guess what? It happens again in 2015 when we have all these solar and lunar eclipses. And so this is absolutely incredible. This doesn't happen like every 3 years like it's happening this time. God is giving us a 3-year warning. 2015, when all these solar and lunar eclipses, everything lines up again. And this is absolutely incredible. Because what do we find here? On Nisan 1 of that year is when we have the total solar eclipse. And then guess what? 2 weeks later, on Passover, which just happens to be on a Shabbat, we have the total lunar eclipse. Then that is followed by another solar eclipse on Rosh Hashanah, followed by another total lunar eclipse on the first day of Sukkot. This is absolutely incredible. Now I want you to look at this picture. Here we have November 13th. That's of this year. But here's what's amazing. I have a picture of Noah's Ark here on the calendar, and this is Heshvan 28. It's November 13th on our calendar. But I want to read Genesis 8, 14 through 16. Here's where it says, in the second month, on the 27th day of the month was the earth dried, and God spoke to Noah, saying, go forth out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. So here we have on the 27th day of the second month, that's when the earth was dried, Noah's ark landed. The following day was Noah's first day off the ark. Well, guess what happens this year? We have a total solar eclipse the very same day Noah stepped off the ark. This is speaking of new beginnings, a whole new season. And so I find this to be absolutely incredible. Well, let's close with this picture. I want you, and I'm going to put up our current year, what we have right now. And if you'll notice on this clip, up at the top left, I have 9/11. We all know that's when the Twin Towers fell. But did you know that was exactly 7 days before Rosh Hashanah? Very significant. And I don't know if you remember, but back in 2001, on Elul 29, the day before Rosh Hashanah, the Dow fell 7%. Well, what do we find 7 years later? In 2008, on the very same day, right before Rosh Hashanah, the Dow falls again 7%. And then what do we find in 2008, 2009, 2010? We have these 3 solar eclipses all falling on the 1st of Av, representing judgment coming. And look at what's happened in 2008, 9, and 10. Then in 2011, 12, and 13, we have these solar eclipses all falling at Jerusalem Day in a row, very significant. And then, of course, we have the solar eclipse in 2012 on the same day Noah steps off the ark this year. And then what is that followed by? 2014 and 2015 with all the lunar eclipses and the solar eclipses. God is saying, warning, warning, these big flashes in the heavens. We need to be paying attention to what's going to be coming in 2014, 2015. Now, I have Elul 29 in 2015 with a big question mark because we don't know what's going to happen there. But I want you to know, if you caught this pattern, you notice from 2001 to 2008 was 7 years. 2008 to 2015 is 7 years. Do you remember the term the Shemitah year? Every 7 years the land was to rest. Well, the Shemitah year has become a day of judgment because when the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, it was a Shemitah year when all of Israel had set their captives free. Nebuchadnezzar was coming and they called out to Egypt to help, and Egypt came to help them. And then Nebuchadnezzar left, and what did they do? They put everyone back into captivity. So God says, I'm going to judge you this Shemitah year, and you're going to be set free, but you'll be at liberty to be judged. And he talked about all this judgment that's coming. Well, get a load of this. 2001 was a Shemitah year. 2008 is a Shemitah year. 2015 is a Shemitah year. When we realize this and we look at this last clip again, do you realize if you back up 7 years, that's 1994. So right here in 1994, which was a Shemitah year, God was sending a signal that there are 21 years, or 3 times 7, 3 sets of 7. You have the Shemitah year is 7, and so 3 times, a set of 3 Shemitah years, was God going to communicate and signal to us disasters coming. So 1994 to 2001 was the first 7, and then 2001 to 2008 was the second 7, and now from 2008 to 2015, here we have the last of the 3 Shemitah year warning that God gave us back in 1994 of total judgment coming. So I really see in 2015, which is just a few years away, God has been forewarning us that judgment is coming. You better get ready. You better get ready. Now, I'm not saying exactly what's going to happen, but when we had these 4 blood moons in the past, it was right after 1948, 1949, and 1950 when Israel became a nation. 1967, 1968 when they captured Jerusalem. And so now it's happening again in 2014 and 2015. It could mean war with Israel, but it could mean a lot more prophetically. So the main thing is we need to get ready. I don't determine eclipses. I don't set the biblical calendar. So this is not a theory. These are facts. It's a fact that these eclipses are coming. It's a fact that they're falling on the feast days. The only theory or theorizing is what might they portend. Well, I'm not sure. And I tell everyone, put it in your own theological pipe and smoke it like you want. But I tell you what, God is sending signals that judgment is coming. And how that entails the book of Revelation and end times, I'll leave that up to every person. But we're going to know more as this story unfolds. But God has definitely set the signs in the heavens. And we need to be paying attention so we can be like the children of Issachar. The children of Issachar were the ones that knew the times. They knew the moeds. They understood and knew what Israel ought to do. So I just pray for each and every one of you that have been watching this, that you would be on high alert. I mean, look what's happening right now in the Middle East. Isaiah 17 is almost ready to be fulfilled. That's a war where Damascus is almost destroyed. We also have the Psalm 83 war where all the nations are coming against Jerusalem. You also have the Ezekiel 38 war, Gog and Magog war. There's not just one war, there's several wars. And if you remember in Matthew 24, the Lord said there would be wars and rumors of wars. Well, we're living it right now. There's a lot of wars that are going on with Iraq and Afghanistan, and now the Middle East has become a hotbed with Iran wanting to take over and control everything. So let's pay attention. Let's look up, for redemption draweth nigh, and let's just pray that we be protected. We need to be praying for the nation of Israel, lifting them up as well. And so I just would like to close with this prayer from Deuteronomy 6. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. I pray that this message today would keep you at peace. Not that you would be alarmed or scared or go run for the hills, but that you would have a peace in knowing that Yeshua is in charge. He's forewarning us. He always sends warning before he brings judgment. The main thing is, are you ready? That's how we begin, and that's how I want to end, with the fact that I pray that you are ready, that you are like a bride without spot, wrinkle, or blemish, as it says in Ephesians. Thank you very much, and may the Lord bless you. Amen.